Hello there. My name is Caleb D, and I'm here to talk about the companions in Ikoria Limited. Before we get in too deep, I want to give a big shout out to the video's sponsor, Wizards of the Coast. I put a lot of my life into making content for this game, and the recognition and the support from them really does mean a lot. So thank you, Wizards. Now on to the video! It was only recently that we had a full spoiler, and we were all trying to figure out if the companion ability was worth it in Limited, or if they should just be played as normal cards in your main deck. And now that we've gotten a chance to play with them, the verdict is in yes. Yes, they are indeed worth it. Of course, not all companions are equal, and we'll get to that in a minute, but most of them should be considered top-tier bombs. It seems like the whole format is developed to support being able to play companions if you open them, and as such, you should be passing them very rarely. In fact, even if you see them very late in the draft, it's often correct to grab them and do your best to adapt. This is a little different than the old question of, do I try and play this Baneslayer Angel that I opened in Pack 3? Since in that case, there'll be times that you draft the Baneslayer, warp your deck around it, and then don't even draw it, right? Companions don't have that risk. And you essentially get to start with 8 cards in your hand, right? You will always have this card. Pivoting is about more than just adjusting to meet the companion requirements. It can mean splashing too. This is a wedge format, and with a lot of great fixing in common. On top of that, the companions are hybrid, which makes splashing even easier, since there's more duels available to fix for them. Normally, a splash is a huge risk, since a card rotting in hand is essentially a mulligan, but a companion off the splash doesn't have that risk, because it's an extra card anyway. If you can't cast your companion, now you're playing fair. That's okay. That's fine. The risk is worth. While any companion is better than none, sometimes you will have the opportunity to drop one in favor of another, and with that in mind, I'm going to do a little rough power ranking of the companions with some tips and tricks on how to build around them. Alright, so note, these cards are going to be rated as companions, so there's going to be a balance of two things: how difficult it is to actually draft around their companion ability, and how powerful they are, how likely they are to win a game of Magic, simply by being able to cast it every game as a companion. So, with that in mind, number 10, LURRUS of the Dream Den. While LURRUS is one of the more busted companions for Constructed, it is not viable in Limited. There are 33 possible creatures you can run alongside LURRUS, and they're not very good creatures. they cost 2 or less. So that makes it hands down the most narrow and difficult to build a functioning Limited deck with. Don't despair! LURRUS is still a great card to run normal-like. You still have a 3/2 lifelink there. Just leave it in the main deck where it belongs. Number 9, ZIRDA the DAWNWAKER. For reference, there are 40 cards. There are 40 other creatures in Ikoria that fit ZIRDA's requirements. So it's much more restrictive ability than a lot of the other companions, and for a dubious payoff, right? Like, now that activated ability is cheaper, it seems like this card was designed for constructed play, and it is seeing some waves there. The one place I could see ZIRDA fitting in is as a companion, is when you're drafting Boros cycling anyway, so all of your creatures just naturally have the cycling ability. They just naturally have an activated ability because of that, and at that point, ZIRDA becomes much more free, and the more free it is, the better it is. Now, there's a power jump between number 9 and number 8, and all of the rest of the companions, I think, are worth warping your draft around, worth pivoting towards, and have a really good chance of winning you games of Magic just by being there as your companion, being there as your little buddy. So, if I think that one of them is better than another one with my limited few days of experience, and your experience has differed, that's okay. That is okay. Hopefully we all agree that they are quite busted. Alright, number 8, YORION Sky Nomad. YORION seems like an incredibly steep cost, and it is. But remember that you can play a few extra lands if you always have a high value 5-drop that you want to play on curve every game. You can also play some off-color cyclers to fill out the slots. This is a cycling format. So in a normal limited deck, you probably want around 23 playables and 17 land. YORION, I think you can get away with like 33, 35 playables and 27, 25 lands. And since there's an above average number of playables in the format, as well as the aforementioned cyclers that you can run to fill out slots, YORION is more manageable than it seems at first glance. Still, if you have another companion that YORION fits into, it might be better to build towards that one and just have a YORION in your main deck. 60 card decks are obviously less consistent than 40 card decks, and if you're playing extra lands and cyclers, you have a really high chance of flooding out if your opponent answers your sweet, sweet flyer. Also note that the fixing gets stretched, so it can be harder to go 3 colors, even though you might need to get enough playables in your deck. The downside to drafting YORION and not quite getting there as a companion is that you now have a 5-mana 4/5 flyer that blinks your valued creatures and resets pacifisms and all that sort of things. So, shucks. Darn. Ugh. Next up, number 7, KAHEERA, the Orphan Guard. So, KAHEERA is very, very good. The cool thing about KAHEERA as a companion is that the ability is always going to be relevant. It's just a matter of getting enough creatures such that you aren't threat light. So far, I've played against it once and it seemed reasonable, but I haven't drafted it myself, so I can't personally attest to how easy or hard it was to draft around. I did do a fast count, and there's 64 other creatures that have KAHEERA relevant creature types, so it's about half the total creatures count of the set. So very similar to the even odd restrictions in terms of getting enough threats into your deck. Seems pretty doable. Especially if you end up drafting 3 colors. Not the toughest restriction, not the easiest either, and with a reasonable payoff, go for it. I will say, the body of KAHEERA, the 3/2 body, is unlikely to win a game on its own, which is the only reason that it's not rated higher. Number 6, OBOSH the PREYPIERCER. OBOSH has a very restrictive ability as a companion, but is also very, very worth it. One of the downsides of OBOSH's restriction is that you don't generally want to play 1-drops in limited, so there's a good chance that your curve starts at 3. You could play some ones with the intent of mutating onto them, but keep in mind that you're only getting access to about half the mutate cards, so that may or may not be feasible. Oddly, blue might be the best color to pair with OBOSH, aside from the required black or red, of course, since you get to play with Aegis Turtle, which then slows down the game, gives you time to get to your companion. Another fun build could involve drafting every single Blister-Spit Gremlins or Whisper squads that you see, and then just straight up cheesing the opponent when OBOSH comes down, just get them. Note that once OBOSH is in play, it is one of the better companions. It has one of the better abilities. Doubling all of your damage, as well as basically attacking as a 3/5, itself is pretty good. Pretty good. Number 5, Jegantha the Wellspring. This card is incredibly free, very worthwhile. Every once in a while, you'll have some bomby double mana spells that you can't part with, but from my experience, that's very rare. And it's definitely worth ditching a few medium cards in order to have a free 5/5 every game, starts just in your hand as an 8th card. Maybe the best simply due to how free the restriction is, combined with how reasonable the body is in this limited format. If for whatever reason you draft it, can't play it, you still have a very castable 5-mana 5/5. This one should not be passed very often. Number 4, KERUGA the MACROSAGE. Skipping 2 seems like a reasonable cost for such a payoff. Heck, there are plenty of decks and formats where I want to be skipping 2s anyway in my slower decks, since your 2-drop just gets bricked by a 3-drop so easily. While tempo does matter in Ikoria, it's still not the fastest format out there. You should have time for this one. There are plenty of great 2-drops in Ikoria, so the cost isn't exactly free. Also, I would be more likely to play defensively minded 3-drops when you draft KERUGA the MACROSAGE, because that way you can gum things up as quickly as possible and give your companion time to take over. Very, very powerful card, KERUGA. Number 3, Amori the Collector. This is a card that I came around on hard. So when I first saw this, I was like, no way is that going to be playable as a limited companion. And I was very skeptical. And I was wrong. I was super wrong. In some formats, giving up not being able to play removal would be a debilitating cost. It would make Amori the Collector not a card anymore. You wouldn't have enough playables. The ability wouldn't be good enough. Ikoria is not those formats. Amori is busted and limited, and often you'll see a huge outburst of mana, a huge turn the turn after you untap with it, and then you still have that 4/5 to beat down with as well. It helps that Mutate gives you value and spell-like effects in creature form, so you can get a little bit of disruption and card advantage while still committing to mono creatures. Currently, I've seen more 3-0 and 7-win Amori lists shared than any other companion. Now, what I've personally seen shared on Twitter isn't like some definitive indicator, but it is quite interesting. Now, the last two were very hard for me to place, to pick which was number 1 and number 2, because both come with some value attached. And coming in at number 2, we have GYRUDA, Doom of Depths. This is not that hard to build around. There's plenty of good cycling and mutate to fill holes in the curve, and skipping from 2 to 4 is not a bad skip when there's lots of quality 2 and 4 mana removal spells out there. While GYRUDA has fewer options for threats than OBOSH, there are fewer even-costed creatures in the format than odd. Those threats tend to be better. Being able to play 2s, 4s, and 6s leads to a more powerful deck than playing 1s, 3s, and 5s. This is a slower and dirtier format. In general, you want to go bigger. And oh my god, the GYRUDA hits. Whew, the sweet, sweet GYRUDA hits. There's a chance that you whiff. There's a chance that you whiff, and you only have a 6/6, which is probably still going to win you the game on its own. But man, getting that extra bit of value is... Now finally, last but not least. God, that would be a weird list if we ended up with least at the end, huh? Who would make a video like that? Me from some months ago. Anyway, last but not least, LUTRI the SPELLCHASER, the little otter that could. LUTRI is awesome. Flash has a relevant ability even if the opponent knows that it's coming, and the format is slow enough that you can usually just let LUTRI chill until you finally draw on that sweet, sweet removal spell to combine it with. I found that even as low as 4-ish quality removal spells is enough for LUTRI to be quite good and very consistent. When I drafted LUTRI, I did end up making some concessions in the drafting portion, but this format, you tend to end up with plenty of playables anyway, so passing one or there to avoid doubles, totally fine. Totally easy to build around, and totally worth it. Having your 8th card companion, your companion body, be more than just a body, but also being another removal spell as well, means that LUTRI is my pick for best companion for limited play. Alright folks, that's going to do it. That's going to wrap up my top 10 companion limited countdown. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts, if I misspoke at some point, you want to call me an idiot, that's what the comment section is for. I swear I read it probably, and and that's it. If you have any, like I said, any thoughts, any considerations, any advice for me in these future videos, let me know. Much love, folks. Take it easy.